Hello, welcome to my channel, Another Bibliophile Reads. My name is Greg. It is about 11 p.m. on November 5th, the night before the beginning of the Read What You Own challenge, where I have challenged myself to read 100 books that I already own before buying another book. And I am done buying books. Even though I still have an hour to go, I'm not going to be buying anymore. The rules I set out for myself have already been stated. There are no real new updates except for one. I'm going to allow myself to buy the new translation of The Brothers Karamazov by Fyodor Dostoevsky. It is currently about $38 in hardcover and $26 on Kindle, and I'm not going to pay that much for that book. It is also a book that I think will eventually go on a deep Kindle sale. If it goes on a deep Kindle sale before the end of this challenge, I will be buying it. And that is the only book that I'm making an exception for. The rest are covered by the rules as already stated. So here it is, until tomorrow. I have just finished book 1 for the 100 book challenge. The Pram by Joe Hill. This is part of the Creature Feature collection published by Amazon last month. It is a series of 6 novellas and novelettes in the horror genre. And this is the story of Willie and his wife. His wife had a miscarriage a few months ago. They were living in a small apartment in Brooklyn. And they are both rather devastated by her loss. So they decide to buy an old farmhouse in Maine because Willie can work from home full time after COVID. So they buy this house. And nearby, there are some sin planters, a sect of religious people that are going slowly extinct because no one's joining their religion. And Willie inherits a pram from one of the shopkeepers to help push his groceries around because they only have one car. And his wife sometimes takes the car when he needs to go grocery shopping. But this is an old, dilapidated pram. There is something wrong with it. It smells bad, or at least his wife thinks it smells bad. But Willie lost his sense of smell when he got a bad case of COVID. And what I really like about this is that it's a very succinct story. And it is the story of a father's grief at a woman's miscarriage, because he very much wanted this baby to arrive and to have a son to raise as his own. But things did not work out that well. And so I think this is a fun little horror novel. No, it is not great. It is not going to go as a masterpiece, but it was a very fun way to spend an afternoon reading a novella. And I recommend it. And I am looking forward to the rest of the Creature Feature collection, published with 5 other authors. I also get to use this. This is a Read What You Own checkoff list created by MJ at Reading This Life. And there we go. I have marked my first book for the 100 book challenge. I have just finished my second book for the 100 book challenge, Read What You Own. On this fancy sheet created by MJ from Reading This Life, I have marking down my progress. And the book that I have finished is Dr. No by Ian Fleming, originally published in 1958. It is important that if you want to read a Dr. No, that you seek out old, used paperback versions or digital versions from Canada, because the modern versions of Ian Fleming have been bowdlerized for modern sensibilities. And I don't have a modern sensibility. I want to read the original. Well, anyway, in this book, which is the fifth or sixth book in the Dr. No series, James Bond is in London. He's had a rough time in one of his previous assignments. So M decides to send James to Jamaica to look into the disappearance of someone. A nice, easy assignment, right? Not so much. He meets up with an old buddy named Quarrel, who is a native of Jamaica. No, he is a native of Jamaica, and he encounters a Chinese woman taking his picture, and he gets a Quarrel to lose her in a car chase, but she's still following him. Why is this Chinese woman following him? And then he wakes up one night to a centipede in his bed. Now, these centipedes can be lethal if they bite you in the right place. And this centipede is creeping and crawling up his body, and James must be totally still. And then, of course, things get really strange when James and Quarrel visit a private island owned by a mysterious man. And this island is known to be a guano island, a bird guano island. And what is this guano island hiding? Well, there is the beautiful Honey Child, a young girl, blonde but Jamaican. She's an orphan, and she's out there seeking seashells to sell for a profit because she's very poor. And she hooks up with James, and then things get bad. And I enjoyed this book. The James Bond books are not like the James Bond movies. James is a little rougher around the gills, maybe not quite so suave. There's a little bit less outrageous action, and a little more just plot and story. And I liked it a lot. I won't say it is my favorite espionage book of all time, but it's well worth looking into, especially if you can get your paws on an old paperback or a Canadian digital copy. I have just finished the third book for the 100 book challenge. It is Grady Hendrix, Ankle Snatcher. This is really just a short story that I bought individually from Amazon on their creature feature collection. And Grady Hendrix is the author of The Paperbacks from Hell, which is responsible for the outrageous prices of old horror paperbacks. And as I said, this is really just a short story. There is a man, he's on a date. It could be his first date, it could be his second date, depending on how you count dates. And he's talking with his girl. And the girl is talking about how she doesn't drink because her family and her father were alcoholics. And then the man talks about how his father murdered his mother. Maybe. The father claimed he wasn't responsible. The father said the boogeyman murdered his wife, the main character's mother. And then the main character goes back to his apartment with his date. And one of the things that the main character said is that he has never stepped off his bed at night and touched the floor without the lights being on, because the boogeyman, also known as the Ankle Snatcher, would grab him. You know something? Bringing back that date was a bad mistake, because something really horrible happens. And this is just an amusing short story. I thought it was going in one direction, and then Hendrix took it in a turn that I wasn't expecting. I said, okay, I can go in that direction. And then he took another turn that I wasn't expecting. And he did that. And when I got to the end, I was thinking, this story did not go the way I thought it was going to go. But it was a darn good short story. Is the second, like I said, the second story in the Creature collection, and I've really enjoyed them both. I have just finished book number 4 by Ruemorakami, Almost Transparent Blue. Actually, I finished it last night, but I did not have time to make the video after finishing it. Well, anyway, this is a book translated from the Japanese. It was published in English in 1977. It is the story of a young man named Rue, curiously the same name as the author. Rue does a lot of drugs and has a lot of sex. That is the plot of the book. The sex is rather perfunctory. It is body part A meeting up with body part B of someone else, or their own selves. And they do a lot of drugs, especially like heroin and other hard drugs. And it just was not a very engaging book. I have read about drug addicts before in books like The Man with the Golden Arm by Nelson Algren, which was a fantastic book. But this book is just rather dull. He just has sex and he does drugs, and that's the end of the story. He loves a woman named Mill Lily, but really that's just part of the background. Now, maybe this unromanticized version of drug addiction and sex is a little more realistic. I don't really know, other than I really can't recommend this book. And it's completely out of print. If you go to Amazon or Thrift Books, this edition will cost you $94. Again, not recommended. I finished my 5th book this morning. It Waits in the Woods by Josh Malerman. This is a novelette in the Creature Feature collection published by Amazon. It is the story of 2 sisters. The elder sister likes to make videos, and her younger sister disappears when she's editing some of her videos. And the parents sort of blame the older sister. Flash forward a few years, the elder sister goes looking for her younger sister. There is apparently a story of a creature in the woods that has no face. And it's an okay short story or novelette. My big problem with this is that I really did not like the ending of this story. Horror stories need a little bit of edge. They need to be a little brutal. And Malerman just was not brutal enough at the end of his short story for me. So out of the 3 creature feature stories that I have read, this fits at the bottom. Again, it's not a terrible story. I did enjoy reading it. It's just never going to be a favorite. Last night, I finished book 6, All Systems Red by Martha Wells. This is a science fiction novel about a robot. I had heard nothing but good comments about this novel, and I was truly looking forward to the beginning of a great new series. And about halfway through this book, I decided that I really wanted this book to end because I wanted to start reading something new. Maybe I missed the memo. Maybe that memo was about a book not called All Systems Red, because this book was really just mediocre. There's some interest about the robot gaining its own personality in its own life and being more than just a robot that's controlled by other people as it gets rid of its governor module. But for me, no. I doubt I will continue on with the series. But, sometimes books just aren't that good. I've been reading Hell of a Woman by Jim Thompson. It is narrated by a character named Dolly. He is a man. He has a unfortunate job as a part door-to-door salesman, part collection agent. and he does not like his job or his life. And here's a passage that I like. Maybe you had too much ambition. Maybe that was the trouble. You couldn't see yourself spending 40 years moving up from office boy to president. So you signed on with a circulation crew. You worked the magazines from one coast to another. And then you ran across a nice little brush deal. It sounded nice anyway. And you worked that until you found something better, something that looked better. And you moved on from that something to another something. Coffee and tea premiums, dinnerware, penny a day insurance, photo coupons, cemetery lots, hosiery, extract, and God knows what all. You begged for the charities. You bought the old gold. You went back to the magazines and the brushes and the coffee and tea. You made good money, a couple hundred a week sometimes. But when you average it up, the good weeks with the bad, it wasn't so good. 50 or 60 a week, well, maybe 70. More than you could make probably behind a gas pump or a soda fountain. But you had to knock yourself out to do it. And you were just standing still. You were still there at the starting place. And you weren't a kid anymore. So when you came to this town and you see this ad, man for outside sales and collections, good deal for hard worker, and you think maybe this is it. This sounds like a right job. This looks like a right town. So you take the job and you settle down in the town. And of course, neither one of them's right. They're just like all the others. The job stinks. The town stinks. You stink. And there's not a goddamn thing you can do about it. All you can do is go on like those other guys go on. The guy giving haircuts to dogs, and the guy sweeping up horse manure, hating it, hating yourself, and hoping. God, I love Jim Thompson sometimes. I finished book 7 last night, A Hell of a Woman by Jim Thompson. This was published in 1984 by the estate of Jim Thompson, so I presume this was something of a desk novel of some sort. It is the story of Frank, who has a bad job. He has a bad marriage. He's sort of a cross between a door-to-door salesman and a collection agency for a easy pay company. They sort of inflate their items really high and expect a lot of people to be delinquent and go out and send people to collect. Anyway, he's out to find some information on a client who has money. He runs across a young girl who is being prostituted out by her aunt. He sort of falls for this girl a little bit, even though he's married. And eventually it comes out that Frank has been cooking the books. He owes his employer a lot of money. And the employer sends him to jail. And this young girl bails him out because her aunt, who's prostituting her out, has a lot of cash around the house. And how much cash? Well, Frank learns that there's $100,000 in this house that the aunt is just sitting on. And this is a book from the 50s, maybe the 40s, somewhere around there. So $100,000 is a lot of money. And of course, Frank wants to get his paws on that long green. And of course, what's the best way to do that? A couple of murders won't hurt. So that's the premise. And Jim Thompson's a lot of fun. His character, he's kind of loathsome, kind of sad sack, wanker. But that's the kind of character that I like in these crime novels. Is this Jim Thompson's best novel? Not by a long shot. But I did enjoy reading it. And I think anyone who picks this book up will enjoy it. That's a wrap for week 1 of the Read What You Own Challenge. I will be starting a new book this afternoon. That will be The Spy Who Came In From the Cold by Jean Le Carré for the Dr. November reading event. I will not finish that today. But thank you for watching and keep on reading.